Welcome to another episode of The Sacred Rebellion, the space where truth isn't filtered, sovereignty is sacred, and rebellion is a return to self. This isn't just a podcast, this is a remembering. We're here to break the trance of comfortability, reclaim our gifts, and rise as the embodied rebels we were born to be. Here we journey with the wild hearts, wayshowers, and visionaries who choose their truth over comfort, their mission over fear, and their souls over the system. This is where the coded ones come to speak. The ones who didn't fit in because they were never meant to fit in. The ones who turned their pain into power and medicine and their story into medicine. So drop in, take a breath, and let's remember who we truly are, one sacred rebellion at a time. Today's guest is a true trailblazer in the starseed world. Welcome, Jenny is the foundation of Starseed Academy, multidimensional empire guiding awakening soul into mastering their psychic gifts, having premium spiritual businesses, and thriving as a CEO of their own soul empire. From launching her YouTube channel in 2019 to scaling a multi-six-figure business, Jenny has led thousands through powerful transformations with her signature programs like Psychic Light, Starseed Weaver of Light, and Starseed CEO. She's here to talk rebellion, activation, and what it really means to rise as a starseed leader in our 3D world. Welcome, Jenny, to the show.
Thank you so much, Michelle. What a beautiful intro. I appreciate you.
Yes. Let's start at the beginning. What was the catalyst moment that awakened your psychic gifts or made you realize you were here for something greater?
Ooh, there's so many when you have a really big mission. I feel like there's a lot of those big moments. You almost feel like you have multiple awakenings, you have multiple catalyst moments. But I would just like throw it back to being a kid and feeling like I had all of these, gifts that were open as a child. And yet looking back, I can see it so clearly. But in that time, it's very confusing and almost scary. As a kid, I would have visitations. Sometimes I had a visitation by an angel, a very, very vivid visitation by an angel. I've had abductions, not so positive. Some of them felt really scary, especially as a kid. And then I also grew up in a haunted home. So there was like all of these things to trigger my gifts, all of these visitations, all of these visions, all of this clairaudience, which is the ability to hear beyond your own world. That was really strong too as a kid. I remember really not understanding like why people couldn't hear things that I could hear. I would fall asleep or start to fall asleep at night and I would start to hear music and no one else could hear this music. And it's something that I remember today. And I know a couple of starseeds have said to me, oh my God, that was me as a kid too. Like hearing music or hearing things, especially as you're falling asleep and you're in that in-between state that no one else can hear and is not really there, but is there for you. There were a lot of initiations as a kid. And I want to say for starseeds listening that a lot of the time we create these really difficult soul contracts where we struggle early on, like having dark night of the soul or multiple dark nights of the soul before you're really like an adult or at least, mature. So like experiencing, one I said already was growing up in a haunted house. That was really, really scary to somebody who's so open to energy and can feel so much energy. And also growing up in a very, I would say it's even more than religious. It was more like cult-like religious environment, fanatical kind of cult-like religious environment, extremely difficult. And then having some abusive situations with my parents, having one parent be alcoholic and physically abusive, and then the other one being like quite mentally abusive and unstable as well. And so like, I know that a lot of starseeds are going to see their childhoods in this and be like, why would I choose that for myself? Like it's resonating so hard what she's saying. And I know so many of us did that. And it's because we were being initiated in so many ways. It's like, if you didn't have it so hard, would you really have been such a seeker later? Would you really have gone and seeked out like, what is the truth? Because I know this ain't it. Like, what does it mean to be happy? Why am I even here? Like, what's the larger purpose? What is my purpose for being on earth at this time? And there's gotta be more, and you just turn into this seeker. And that's what happened. I just, as a teenager, and especially in my 20s, I was just such a seeker of everything, spirit guides. I got really obsessed with like NDE, near-death experiences. Like I went down the whole rabbit hole of that right before I had an NDE, by the way. I was like obsessed with them for like 1 or 2 years. And then I had one And it was almost like I was prepping myself for it. So there's been initiations all along the way. There's been gifts all along the way, but it's been really, really messy for me until kind of like having more moments of clarity as I got older, like literally in my 30s, I would say. So before that, it was all just like a one big hot mess for me, of gifts and trauma and learning through contrast and dark nights of the soul, and just like a bit of a desperation searching for something better and for light in this world.
Yeah, I can relate to the seeker. I don't know if that ever gets out of our blood, just the constant seeking of, something happens in our lives and we're constantly looking for answers within, right? Like constantly looking here. And I think that's like a huge pivotal moment in a lot of us starseeds, is that when we stop looking out and we start to come in here and we're like, okay, my life is not where I want it to be. It's not moving in the direction I want it to be. What do I do next? And instead of being like, okay, I'm going to book my next section, my next like session. I know for me, it's like, okay, I need to like get back to the basics. I need to come back into here. I need to focus on what am I doing? What am I doing that's not in alignment? What is moving and forward, and those ways. And I think that's a huge piece. I can relate a lot to your story as someone, like the sounds right before you go to sleep. It was voices for me. It wasn't music. It was voices. It'd be like, hey, Michelle, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what? Who here? Did you? Nope. And I even shared a room with my sister. I'm like, did you hear that? She's like, you're crazy. So I can relate to that so much. Even now, like once in a while, I hear that voice and I'm like, it's time to clean the house, like clear out some stuff. But I love that you resonate with that, because that was my story, right? In a haunted house, same thing, right? So very fascinating that it's almost like they have to put us in the harshest conditions for us to be like, I can't do this. Like I have to figure out something different than not everybody else is looking at. And I love that perspective because I can relate with that a lot.
It's almost like that, unfortunately, was what it took for me to have my awakenings, was through this contrast, through this difficult energy, through trying to, I know what I don't want now, and now I have to seek for something that I do want. And I'll also say, like, for me, one of my bigger shifts coming into clarity was finally getting sober. Like that was something that, because I had such an abusive upbringing and all this, again, another starseed thing, you're overwhelmed by your gifts. You don't even know that you are, but you are. Your gifts are so big that you're feeling anxious all the time. Like your anxiety disorder, guess what? It's because you're psychic and you're not using your gifts. Like your anxiety disorder is an actual real anxiety. I mean, it feels that way, but it's actually like a lot of energy building up in your system because you're receiving it all and you're so psychic. That's what happens to a lot of us. Plus, I had PTSD from all the religious trauma and the parental abuse. So I actually ended up turning to drugs and alcohol for many, many years to escape what was going on with me. Like it was too big, it was too much, it felt like too much pressure. And for me, it was just like, let me just disappear into this. But when I was able to get sober, which was a very big moment from the spirit guide coming through and being like, are you going to start living this life anytime soon? Or are you going to continue on like a zombie? Because you're wasting your time. And you've got a mission, you've got this purpose lined up, and you're just wasting all this time escaping into your feelings. Like, when are you gonna cut this out? And it was such a real visitation. It was so real for me. And I just remember being like, oh God, like I really need to figure this out. And as soon as I did, I mean, that was like such a journey too, right? Sobrieties could be a whole podcast episode, so we won't go there. But like once I was able to really let go of like the alcohol, any of it, and any drugs at all. Like, so no wine, no nothing, no marijuana, no like, everybody likes to talk about like, the spiritual drugs like mushroom and ayahuasca. Like, no, I had to have none of it at all, and just be so clean in my system. That's when my gifts became so crystal clear, so different, so accurate, so detailed, so like I guess obvious, like you couldn't miss them. They were so in your face. And that when I was like, what is this? What are these? What am I dealing with? And then I had to like do a deep dive into how do my gifts work and what is even happening inside of my body. And that's how I became such a specialist of the clairs, specifically like a master of the language of the clairs, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance, and channeling would be another thing that I really, really certify people on and I'm a master of as well. And those were the things but that was my conditions. I had to like go through all that and then face all of it, all my demons without help of alcohol and drugs and numbing myself in any way and like really just go raw into real life. And that's when everything got really super clear for me. So I think, again, a lot of people can relate to, and unfortunately, a lot of people are stuck in the escapism phase still, and that's totally understandable. But you can turn your life around in like less than a year. If you really want to do it, you can absolutely do it.
I love that you brought up sobriety because that's a really big thing in the spiritual community right now is like ayahuasca and mushrooms and I think they have their place and their time, but you know, I've had clients that have done it 12 or 15 times ayahuasca and I just don't think that's necessary. You know, when you're integrating and you're doing your work and your shadow and you have the tools like you're talking about and really amplifying gifts and working on clears and foundational aspects of spirituality, you don't need ayahuasca 15 times. You don't need to microdose all the time. There's a point where it's like you have to start trusting what's in here. And I love how you brought that sobriety because same for me. It was like actually alcohol made me sick for a lot of years of not being able to even touch it. Gave me like almost like ulcer kind of feeling in my stomach. And so yeah, sobriety is a huge aspect when you're activating gifts and what you can and can play with. And I call them spirits, you know, when people are like, oh, so I just can't drink anymore. And I'm like, you're playing with spirits, depends on what spirits you want to play with, you know. And I love how you brought up sobriety because I think that's really important on the effects that it affects our channeling, our aura, and all the aspects of ourselves in the multidimensional parts of us that affects. And essentially what you're doing is you're ingesting a spirit. And I love how you brought up the sobriety actually brought in clarity for you instead of having
Yeah,
to have that.
it's like everything can be measured. They've actually been able to measure the frequency. Everything is made of frequency. We know
Right.
this, right? Everything. So
Yeah.
you can measure the frequency of obviously thoughts and words and emotions, but you can also measure the frequency of alcohol, mushrooms, ayahuasca, all those things. And like you compare it to your own set point frequency. Is it bringing you up or bringing you down, right? We all have what I call a set point frequency. What's your neutral? So my neutral for a long time was anxiety. Unfortunately for me, that was literally my neutral. I would just return back to it, return back to it. Even if I had a good day, return back to it. That was my neutral. So for a long time, marijuana served me because marijuana resonates around 400 hertz, which is just neutral. It's just neutral. And anxiety is below that, right? It's definitely in like the 300s. And so it would bring me up, bring me up, bring me up. But there becomes a point where those things can no longer serve you because you outgrow the frequency. My set point was starting to get up into like the 500 hertz, which is love and like compassion and all these things. And something that helped me was now harming me. Something that used to lift me up was now dragging me down below where I was with my set point. And so I understand where maybe it serves at a point in your journey. And I would say, even I feel like this is dramatic, but I feel like marijuana saved my life multiple times from being in such a bad emotional state to bringing me to at least just neutral where I could just breathe. I will say though, alcohol is not good for anything or anyone. It's so low of a frequency. It's a depressant. It's like in the twos, I think. That's way below neutral. That is going to harm you no matter what. But I see how marijuana can be used as a medicine. However, you very quickly will outgrow that. And if you continue to play in that, you're only bringing yourself down, bringing yourself down, bringing yourself down. And what happens when you lower your frequency is your aura weakens, which is your first line of defense against like a psychic attack entities and all that. And then your gifts weaken. So all of a sudden, it's not so loud anymore when I try to tune into my guides. I can't see as clear. Everything's a lot quieter. Everything seems further away. And then I let all that go and I let like my frequency just be so pristine, like clear as a bell. I don't even have to reach for it anymore. You know, as soon as I want to connect, it's right there. It's loud, it's clear, it's bold, it's vibrant. Why would I ever mess with that again? Like I would never touch like anything, mushrooms, ayahuasca, nothing like we said, but I've also even let go of caffeine because it's like, this is such a gift. For me personally, it's like such a comfort to have such a clear channel. And also it's my livelihood. So I would never mess with that. I would never risk that. So I think that, like you said, maybe there's a time and a place for things, the way that marijuana can help and be a medicine, but it's not supposed to be a forever thing. It's supposed to maybe get you through a difficult moment or have that breakthrough. But doing ayahuasca, what did you say, like 15 times? That's you giving your power away.
Right.
Absolutely. And also those kinds of like opening yourself up that deeply in those kinds of retreats, how many people come back with attachments? Like
All of
so
them.
many. Yeah.
All of them? Yeah, I've had a few people that I've worked with after ayahuasca and mushrooms, and they've gone to retreats with shamans or people who are star seeds and often removed 5 or 6 entities, off of them that are attached to the dark that they were trying to purge. And because the medicine showed that to them, they didn't have the integration aspects of themselves. And then also implants are another one that a lot of people come back with, is a lot of implants and dials of their clairs turned down. I've seen that too. Yeah, it's very fascinating to see. I've never done plant medicine, so I don't really know. But yeah, my fix is about caffeine, and that's about it. But I even that is like a cup of coffee a day. It's not like 5 or 6 drinks of Red Bulls and things like that. It's just, and I enjoy coffee, period. I just like the taste of it. But I haven't noticed it. I go through spurts. Back in March, I did a huge candida cleanse and I didn't touch caffeine or sugar for an entire month. And my channel was epic. So it's like your food and the things that you intake in your body hold a frequency just as much as your surrounding or environment.
You're also consuming what you take in through your eyes. What are you scrolling? What are you watching on Netflix? What music are you listening to? Consumption isn't just about food and drink. You're also consuming the frequency of your friends and the people that you surround yourself with and all of that. So if I watch like a lot of, I mean, we're all guilty of watching reality TV, but if I watch a lot of like lower energy drama, this, that, it can also start to turn down your frequency, right? I know at Halloween, everybody loves a good spooky film for sure. But if you start to just really like watch that all the time and immerse yourself in that, demonic energies and ghosty energies or whatever, you are going to start to vibrate at that frequency. And you don't want that. So it's just like really protecting yourself as a portal. You're like a doorway, you're like a portal, you're like a sacred tool, like a divine tool of spirit. And that's how I think of myself and like, being a temple that I have to be so protective of.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, for sure. Next question. You've built an entire starseed empire from scratch. What belief systems or old paradigms did you have to rebel against to get here?
Ooh, what a good question. I think there's a couple that are popping in. The first one is the lack of like the self-worth issues around, well, what do I have to share that someone else has already said it? Someone else is doing it better. Why should I bother? How could I? That was like when I was being nudged to start my YouTube channel. I'm like, well, like there's so many spiritual YouTubers out there doing it right. Who am I to come in here and think I have something to share? But the thing is, every single person listening, you have stories that nobody's heard before. Your own personal stories or the way that you perceive something to be, or your own visitations or your own guided experiences or your own, experiences with the divine, like those are valuable. Your stories are probably the most valuable thing about you. And you also have like a different way of interpreting like what ascension is, what a starseed is, what this is, what that is. And so there's an entire soul tribe of people that are for you. Everyone has like a soul tribe of, I believe, clients or audience or subscribers or however you want to think about it, that are going to resonate to you more than anyone else. And so you're not here for everyone. Not everybody's going to get it, but you're going to have your own little community that's so for you and like that you can help so much. And even like the biggest guru, spiritual, beautiful guru, like the biggest names out there can't help them as much as you can because you're encoded to their soul tribe. So it's like that was the first thing I had to get over is like, well, who do I think I am? The second thing that I had to get over is abundance does not come from an outside source, right? That's like the biggest 9 to 5 programming out there is that in this 3D system, matrix system, they try to tell you straight from school early on that you need a boss to give you a paycheck to get the money. But then I had this weird like awakening around because I worked for this woman who was an entrepreneur. And I was like, wait a minute. So if I have to get my paycheck from her, who's she getting her paycheck from? Oh, wait a minute. She's creating it herself from a dream that she has inside of herself. And she's got this big dream and she's working on it. And I just really respected that. But then I realized I have dreams. I have dreams that are super important, super valid. Why am I working for someone else's dreams to come true? when I have dreams that I need to make come true. And that was just like a turning moment. And it's like, as spiritual people, we don't have trouble believing that we manifest everything else. Oh, I manifested this friendship. Oh, I manifested this coincidence or synchronicity. Oh, I manifested this or that. Why do we not also think that we would manifest our abundance? Why do we think that has to come from something outside of ourselves, right? Everything comes from within. Your inner environment creates the mirrored reflection of your outer environment. And that has to include money because it includes everything. And money's just a frequency. And I really had to like break down all of that because that's a big program to break down. And I had to realize that even my clients were not my source of abundance. It's not them, even though it seems like it's them, the way it seems like your boss is giving you a paycheck, or it seems like my client is paying for a session. You think it's coming from an outside source, but you created that from within first. You created within how much money you were going to attract, how much you could hold, how much you believe you're worth, and all of that inside of you, all of that pocket of your bank vaults, within, just creates how much streams in. So it's about doing that inner work. It's always going inside. It's like, if you don't like something on the outside, anything at all, you got to go within first to shift it. Because it's like the movie screen thing. So like, imagine you're in a movie theater and you don't like what the screen is showing. So you walk up to that big, huge movie screen in the theater and you try to change it from there. What is that going to do? Nothing. When you get up to it, you realize it's just a blank screen that something's being projected onto. That's your life. You can't change it at the screen level, which means you can't change things from the outside. You need to walk inside, go to the projector room in the movie theater, which is your heart. Your heart is literally projecting your life onto the screen around you of your 3D reality is a simulation screen. And it just shows us holographically everything that's going on inside. So if you don't like what's going on in the movie, don't walk up to the screen, go to the projector room, go to your heart, go within and be like, where is this coming from? I need to change the movie from this level, from this deep inner level in order to change the reflection or what shows up in my life. So yeah, the self-worth about who am I, what do I have to offer, and the money comes from an outside source. Those were my biggest things.
I love how you explain that. I've never thought of it that way. The heart is the projection. Yeah, I love that. That's a really interesting. When I do NLP, that's actually how I neutralize a trauma event is I put them in a movie theater and I turn it to black and white and they walk and talk through their own eyes in black and white and then they watch it seat belted in from the projection screen. It's very interesting. That's an interesting way of like seeing it. I really like that. Thank you for sharing that. You've created a multi six-figure premium starseed business. How do you stay in energetic integrity while scaling at that level?
So all day long, I'm like a little ping pong ball bouncing back and forth between alignment and action. And some people would call that divine feminine, divine masculine. So before I go to take action, which is the divine masculine energy, I've got to make sure that I'm in alignment with my divine feminine first. So this is like literally all day long. So for instance, like before I go to create a piece of content, I'm doing a quick sacred space, connecting into my, to God's source and my highest human self and my guides and stuff, and telling them, okay, this is what I'm trying to create. This is who I'm trying to call in. Please help me get into this kind of like alignment with this vibration of frequency, this magnetization of the right person, and then pen to paper or on the keyboard. So alignment, action, all day long, bouncing back and forth. Once that action is complete and I have like a whole to-do list, which I always have a whole to-do list, but then I look at the to-do list and I'm like, what is my feminine, what is my intuition saying is next for me? Because I know that maybe I should work on this, but I'm really feeling called to work on this other thing. I got to trust that nudge. I got to trust that intuition. I got to trust that feminine. Okay, that's what I'm feeling called to. Okay, let's go. Another quick, okay, guys, here we go. Like always connecting with my highest self, God, and my angels and my guides and all of that. And then letting them know we're really getting clear on the frequency, and then action follows. So it's like, I'm just feel so like that's how I find balance. That's how I stay balanced between feminine and masculine, receiving and output, intuition and action, energetics and strategy. There's all these different words for these different sides of it, and that will create balance for you.
Love that. Yeah, I love that. That's how I do it too. I'm definitely connecting and yeah, it's definitely a ping pong experience of feminine, masculine, feminine, masculine. It's just a bounce back and forth. And it's always interesting to me because I've had a couple clients that are like, well, I'm just really learning my feminine and that's why my business isn't working. And I'm like, ooh, you fell into a trap. That's a trap. That's such a trap. And I see it a lot in spiritual businesses is that, I'm going to trust that I'm going to receive. I'm going to trust I'm going to receive. And while that does have a place and that is a frequency, people often forget that it has to match with the action. There has to be a balance in that action of, structure and receive, structure and receive. And I love how you said that, because I think that's really common. I've noticed a lot. I don't know, maybe you can chime in here, of like people thinking they just need to sit back in their feminine energy, especially females, because we often have to be, that action aspect. And what's your thoughts on that?
I think sometimes when the pendulum has been too long in one energy, it has to go so far, swing so far into the other to find balance. So, like if you've been in your masculine energy only, you've been in hustle mode, you've been denying your feminine, those people have to swing so far into the feminine just to create balance. And then they spend like almost like overly do that. And then slowly the pendulum swings and then it finds its balance eventually. But like if you overdo it on one end, you tend to overdo it on the other end in order to try to, it's just a human way of figuring things out. But I'd say, like, to be completely real, if you're going to sit back and think you're going to, create a six-figure business or find your divine true love partner, but you're going to sit at home, you're delulu. Like, you delusional. Because if you're not taking any action, it's not going to happen, right? So you've got to, as soon as you can, start to do the ping pong ball between the balance. Okay, I want to find my divine partner. So what's the best thing? Okay, well, let me start to manifest him and create a list of all the little characteristics that he's going to have. How beautiful, right? Okay, well, then I got to go and take an action. What kind of an action can I take around this? Okay, well, this is coming out of nowhere. Maybe someone needs to hear this. Here's my manifest your divine partner tip. Once you create characteristics of the 10 top things, put them in order of importance. And it's not about looks. If you really want your divine partner, you have to let that go, because a lot of the time they're not your typical type. You need to let that go. It needs to be things like honesty. Maybe you want chemistry. Maybe you want someone who is spiritual. Maybe you want someone who's ambitious. Think about those kind of qualities, put them in order, and then go take action, as in, starting at the top, are you each one of those things? Because you cannot attract what you are not. So then you spend an entire week on the first thing. Okay, well, I want someone honest above all else. Okay, well, now where can you be more honest in your life? So you spend a week going and telling it like it is to everybody. Being the most honest that you can possibly be online and with your family, with your friends, and then you move on to quality 2. And then you go. So that's like an example of the feminine manifestation, right? With a fancy little list, and you put it on the fridge where you can see it, and you do a little ritual and a prayer, dance under the full moon, whatever you want to do. But then you need to go and do the action, which feels like the doing or the being. A lot of the time you've got to be it.
I love how you said make a list and then go back and see if you match up with that list, because I have actually worked with clients to manifest their divine partner, and oftentimes it's a lot of reprogramming in their own belief systems of figuring out that what they want, they're not even that person. And so in order to be a vibrational match of somebody that you're manifesting, you have to also be that vibrational match, because someone's not going to date you or marry you if you don't match their checklist either. So it works on both perceptions. And I think it's really important that when people realize that when they are manifesting a divine partner, they need to really work on here, so that they can fit that list before they ever join Tinder or start dating or whatever. Because if you're here, then it's not going to be, I have literally seen people do their inner work, jump on a dating site, and the second guy they match with, it's like their divine partner. And it's because everything, this is just a reflection, just like you said, with the projection screen, and you're just going to start to attract exactly what you're used to dating. And yeah, that's such a good tip. I love that. And I definitely will say that there'll probably be some listeners that will relate with that for sure. What is your perspective on being a CEO of a spiritual business versus following a 3D business model? And what's the energetic shift that you can share with the audience?
I think that the CEO, okay, so like a 3D business, there's an emptiness to it in my eyes, or in my clairsentience, to be honest. Like in my ability to feel energy and frequency, which is clairsentience, by the way. I can feel an empty space there because it's missing the heart, it's missing the mission, it's missing the purpose, it's missing that personal touch. And when you're talking about 5D, 6D businesses, these elevated businesses, again, they're like this little ping pong ball where they're bouncing back and forth or able to hold the deeper, like, what is your mission? Who are you here to serve? It's like, it's a deep, soulful purpose that you're here for. That's a spiritual business. It holds, and that's why when people say it's just business, it's not personal, you know they're in a 3D business because it's incredibly personal, because your business becomes this extension of you where it feels like, it's holding this huge, beautiful purpose and mission and is able to like reach out and make a difference in the world. And it just feels very connected to the heart space. So that is probably the biggest difference, and the biggest shift is like, let it be personal. That's okay. Don't listen to everyone's that's like, it's not business, it's not personal. If you don't feel good, push through and show up anyway. All the things that don't feel right. And instead, be just so authentic and be just so in your heart and be just so real. And people will feel that, and they will really be able to relate and connect to that. And of course, I believe in strategy because that is the masculine side. And I understand that we live in a 3D world right now. So I have lots of like elevated 3D strategies that I can anchor higher frequencies into to shift it, but still make it work in a physical realm, right? So it's like, again, it's a beautiful balancing act, because if I just went off like, okay, my business everything needs to be 5D. Okay, fine. But that it can't be real then on Earth, because Earth is 3D. So where can I anchor in like a funnel, like an email funnel, a sequence, a sales page, a this, a that. But then I fill it up with all the beautiful frequencies, but I have to have a container that's 3D almost, if that makes sense. Like a website is like a 3D. A sales page is a 3D container, an email, but then you fill it up with all of that gorgeous, like my mission and my purpose, and I'm here to serve, and I'm going to help these people, and here's my gifts. And just like this beautiful feeling of your personal mission here.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely have to be 3D. I've seen that too, where people, oh, I just need a Sam cart, or and that's fine. You can do Sam cart for so long, but then you're gonna miss out on passive income. And I'm working on that personally in my business, is that passive income of like, I have the workshops, I have the things, and now it's like the funneling aspects and the structure and going back through those things. And yeah, it's a lot of work, quote. I call it work because you have to go through and write emails and all the things, but it pays off and it works because I've seen it in other people's businesses. And yeah, you definitely have to anchor in those 3D business aspects, but anchor in the higher frequencies. I love that.
And it's also about like not following someone else's blueprint, right? Like if you see, like you said, like, so something works for someone else, well, maybe that's encoded to their blueprint of success and it's not yours. So also be leery of like, copycat, like where someone says, oh, I have the most incredible email sequence. It works every time. Let me send it to you. It's not going to work for you, right? Like we probably know, right? Because it's not your frequency. It's not your soul signature. It's not your language. Like there's no shortcuts, because we can't copy paste someone else's energy and have it work for our authentic business. That doesn't compute.
Right. And I will totally agree with you that your business is an extension of you, because pretty much every workshop that I've ever put out there, I created for myself. Right? That's like my workshop. It's what I learned. It's what I needed. And obviously, like for other people, they have learned things from it too. And so, yeah, it should be a direct extension. And sometimes when I'm like, oh man, I'm kind of having a rough day, I need to receive, I'll just listen to one of my activations, right? And just receive from my own codes and my own voice, because your business is you. It's you. It's literally you. It's your consciousness. So I love that. What's been your most potent program or offering, and why do you feel it changed the game for you?
I think my first course, Psychic Light, just took off because I had already proved myself as a channeler in my space, and people were seeing that I had experienced a ton of growth. So there's a few layers here. So I allow my cringe videos to sit on YouTube, even though I'm not that person anymore, and even though I'm way beyond where I was at, because it shows growth. So like, when I first started my YouTube channel, please don't, by the way, go back and scroll back to 20 Please don't do it, anyone listening. But if you did, you would see such a level of growth in my confidence, in my actual channeling itself, very evident, and just in my And so I leave that, people see the growth. That's huge because people are like, oh, what is she on? What is she doing? How did she, in just a few years, how did she get to this place? So that's really helpful to have that up there. But Psychic Light is my certified channeling course. It started not as certified. It started as just a 1-month course, and it very quickly grew to 2 months, 3 months, and now it's this 4-month course where you get certified as a master channeler. That is definitely what my first signature offer that got me so well known. Now I think I'm known for other things just as much, but that was definitely the first one where people were like, when is Psychic Light going again? When's the next round? And I started having a wait list. I'd never had a wait list in my business before for anything. And I knew it hit with people. They were like, get me on the wait list. Let me know. I need to be in there. I know that I need to add channeling to my energy healing or to my mediumship, or I know that there's a new level of channeling that I haven't unlocked yet. I see your detail and your accuracy and your speed, and I want that. And I know I can do it. I'm like, I know you can too. Come in and let me show you how, because I do it in such a specific way where, again, it's not all just fluff. I really like to ground things into strategy, action, plans, but have all that higher frequency in it. So it just works for so many people because of the way that I teach it. So that was the thing that just totally blew up for me. Changed the game.
I love that. If the entire Starseed Collective could hear one thing from you right now, what truth would you speak into their hearts? What message do you have?
So if you are here and you are resonating as a starseed, which means that you believe that Earth is not your normal place, your normal home, not your choice, that you actually would probably feel a lot happier as a Pleiadian or a Lyran or a Sirian or an Arcturian. Like you just know when you know when you know. The way that I would just gaze at Orion's belt and be like, that's it, that's home. What am I doing here? There's like a knowing that you're a starseed, and then there's a knowing that you are awakened. If you are awakened, you have like a extra level of self-awareness that other people don't have. A self-awareness that you are not just a human on autopilot. You've unplugged from autopilot, and now you are this eternal soul realizing that you're having a temporary experience. That's an awakening, right? It's not that complicated. If you're having an awakening though, you just woke up in a planet that was built to keep you asleep. That means something. This planet of Earth literally has built in what we call the veil of forgetting. When you're born into this space, everyone, and I know some people say, oh, I never had that when I was a kid. I was just super awakened. I disagree. Everyone has gone through a veil of forgetting. If you're on Earth, it's a part of the soul contracts to even be allowed to come here. You go through the veil of forgetting so that you forget all that you are. You don't remember all your hundreds of lives, thousands of lives. You don't remember all your gifts. You don't remember you're the eternal soul. There's a period where you're really on autopilot. Usually in your teens and 20s, you have no self-awareness whatsoever. You're just on autopilot. You're like a little robot. Then something happens to have an awakening, and it just like changes everything. Everything changes, and it can be really scary when you have that awakening. But the point of this little message to the Starseed Collective is, if you are here and you are Starseed and you have had an awakening, I promise you that you have a mission. You would not be a Starseed and awakened if you weren't a leader that was here to lead people in some way into this new Earth kind of society that we're building, the new Earth paradigm, people call it, or just like the ascended version of human society. You're here to lead, and there's a lot of phases before we get to that is messy, and we need leaders, and we need people to really step into being of service. So you volunteered to be here on Earth. You're going to have to swallow that pill. Yes, you did. If you are a starseed and you are awakened, you volunteered to be here because you are supposed to be leading and being of service. So then it's like, well, then the question becomes, well, how am I supposed to be of service? What's my mission? Why am I here? Because they're all so different. Breaking it down to the most simplistic version is, you're here to use your gifts in service. That's it. You got to use your gifts in service to either Gaia or humanity or the animal kingdom, or some people are here for everybody, all the above. You're here for something. You're here to use your gifts in service. So I always say there's 4 steps to this. The first step to a starseed being in their mission is discover what your gifts are. That's the very first step. The second step is master those gifts to a level where you feel like you're not just confident, but you are truly the master of that. Nobody could do it the way you do it. So we're discovering gifts, we're mastering gifts, then we're using our gifts in service. You're going to start to offer your gifts. You're going to start to create spaces where people can pay you for your services so that you start to be that new Earth example. A new Earth example is a new Earth citizen makes their money from their gifts. That's what new Earth leader is, right? So that's your third step. Use your gifts in service. And then once you're there, you're doing really good. And then the fourth step is build your empire. Build your empire. Unplug completely from the 9 to 5. Build an empire in a community where people can come and join you and co-create with you or be your clients. And this is what New Earth looks like, is a bunch of people just building empires that can harmonize together. If depending on what step you're on, or if you're on step 1 and you need to discover what your gifts are, come into my Starseed mentorship called Sovereign Creator Codex. If you're on step 2 and you're ready to master your gifts, I have 3 different Starseed courses on mastering gifts. I've got one for the clairs, one for channeling, and one for energy work, energy healer. And then once we've discovered and mastered the gifts, it's time to start building your offers and offering your gifts and service. Come into Starseed Business Academy. That's how people, that takes you from 0 to 10K. That's the space for you, 10K months. And then beyond 10K months, that's when you're in step 4, building your empire. That's a one-on-one mentorship with me called Starseed CEO. So those are the 4 steps. It is my mission, like my personal mission, to actually walk people through those steps. So I've taken people literally from step 1 all the way to step 4, or they come and find me when they're already on step 3 or step 2 or wherever it is. Wherever you're at, I have a space for you. And that is my mission, to support you through that.
Yeah. That's amazing. From what I've seen in your posts and your programs, they're very well done. She's legit. She knows what she's doing. And I think that's hard to find right now in the Starseed community, is some people who walk the walk and talk the talk, you know what I'm saying? And be able to say, hey, yeah, like I'm a spiritual business entrepreneur that makes 6-figure business, and I can get you into the place I am because I have those codes. And I think oftentimes, we have spiritual entrepreneurs that are saying they can do things, but they haven't done them themselves. And so they're not reflecting exactly truth, right? And that's the one thing I've always admired of you, Jenny, is that you anchor your stuff in truth. And that is not as common in our spiritual community as we think. And so I just want to thank you for being that anchor of truth in our society, in our frequency, and in our New Earth space, because we need people like you that can lead these super gifted, talented people. Because I don't know, about me, it's like I have all these gifts and I have all these abilities and I'm confident and I know how to do them, but like, how do I anchor that into a 3-dimensional business, And so that's what Jenny is so gifted, is that she's able to anchor those gifts and help us articulate and to be able to use the words of English, which is not our first language as starseeds, right? And anchor them into a 3-dimensional business and aspect where we can bring foundational abundance into our reality and shift our entire lineage. And that's why I'm so grateful that you have stepped into your mission. Thank you for being you.
Thank you so much. I love it. I love to build offer suites. It's my favorite thing. Building out an offer with someone that's completely based on their soul gifts and their personal mission, their spiritual specialty, like really niche down, and then creating messaging and content to support it. Favorite thing in the world. I love it so much. But I do honor what you said about, like, it is kind of rare now, which is kind of sad, to find someone that's walking their talk or really deeply anchored. I would say what you said is super true. And then there's one other thing that stands out to me, is not just people saying that they can create something, but they haven't created it for themselves. Totally see that a lot, unfortunately. But I also see people using this, like what I call gobbledygook language, where they take like the most extremely complex, complicated words to string together into a sentence to try to make themselves sound like they really understand something deeply. Oh my God, it'll make your third eye roll. It's so bad. You'll read it and it will be like, we are now coming into like the phantom matrix, inverted portal of the divine, sexual, parasitic, da, 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 da. And you're like, okay, wait a minute. If you really understood what you were talking about, you could just say it. And I think that Jesus and other ascended masters, that their strength was that they could take really complex ideas and simplify it so that everyone could understand and benefit from that. And I think that that is what I aspire to do, is to take really complex things and then bring them down grounded, very grounded and simple, in the way that I can explain like how crystalline upgrades work, or how channeling works, or how this clair works, or how that clair works, and not leaving people feeling baffled or like they're never going to get it. They're not at my level. That's just ego. That's just ego. So I actually feel, I'm sure there's maybe situations where that person speaking that crazy language, maybe that is their truth. But I think what's more common is it's ego. I think it's ego trying to sound self-important and be put on a pedestal and look at me, look at me. And I just feel really icky about that. Like that makes me feel so icky, like where I'll just unfollow because I don't need that. And I want starseeds listening to this to know that it's not like that. A real teacher is not going to make you feel that way. They're going to bring it down and explain it and laugh with you and make it so like fun and clear and simple and something that you can slowly build complexity into, but not like that. That's just gobbledygook, and that's just a huge red flag to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think it also adds into, in the spiritual community, I always say that it's a borderline mental illness where people have been, quote, accepted as normal. And it's really important that people understand that in order to anchor down your gifts and to hold your medicine is to look inward and to figure out those belief systems or shadow aspects or inner child work to be able to do those things. And if you do have an entity or your channel isn't clear or you have things going on in your field that you're aware of and you're still working on clients, that's part of not being ethical. And that is part of not being in a space of alignment. And I understand like some of this is some people's livelihood and this is where they have to make money, but that's where you go back into 3D world, right? And if you're not anchoring in those divine truths, that's when we start to experience the distortion in our fields, is because then it becomes survival. We go back into that, right? When you said that 0 point, some people's 0 point is survival, and that has to go back into that space. And so thank you for explaining that so well. And I agree with you as someone who has taught children. I have a degree in education and also having my own courses. If you ever have that attitude of, better than or act like you're a hierarchy of something, you probably should check yourself. Check yourself. Someone asked me the other day, they said something along, how come you don't advertise that you channel 12D mantis beings? And I said, because they're just me. It's just me. It's just me. And that's where I come into like that humbling aspects of being able to that's just me. They're not outside of me. That's just me. And so, and I know some people like to put that on their pages and whatever, teach their own. But for me, it's like, it's just me. And I'm going to just be me and authentic and harness those energies. And that's why I've always been drawn to your work, because I feel like you are just you. And that is magical and grounded and authentic and being able to really hold energy and talk the talk. And I think we need more people like you in our community.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. So I just want you to know that that's not unnoticed. I really admire your work. So last question before we finish up. What is your current rebellion and what are you deconstructing, evolving, or reclaiming right now in your life?
Okay, so this is something that's like a real fire within me. My current rebellion would be to the patriarchy, and not in a fanatical way, but in a way of reclaiming the priestess within, reclaiming the word witch, reclaiming the word priestess, and reclaiming my womb magic and my internal magic. I want to reclaim my spells. I want to reclaim my rituals. I want to dance with the goddesses. I want to know that I am a portal to the Great Mother, the womb of Source, and I want to let the wild within flourish. That's what I want to do.
I love that. That's so powerful. That was part of the witch wound is a whole podcast on itself, right? The witch wound is so fascinating. One of my first classes I ever took when I was awakening was a witch class, because I knew I had always kind of like resonated with like spells and the magical and the mystics part of myself. And it was one of the most enjoyable classes, learning about runes and all the different parts of the pagan frequency. And it's a lot of fun to kind of just be one of the wild ones, the wild hearts, the wild feminine aspects of that priestess. And yeah, no, it's beautiful. It kind of reminds me of being, when they say that how diamonds are created is through consistent pressure, right? And so when we get to that point of like consistent pressure, that's kind of the birth of the priestess and the oracle, right? Where it is that becoming the diamond aspects of yourself. And that diamond aspect blooms in within your womb and radiates through your whole being. And so I love that for you. I love that. And I can see that.
I feel like, like the fear of, in the 1400s and up to 1700s or even later, the fear of men, of women, and the flame of fear fanned by the church for sure was like, if we allow women to gather together, that they will be a force to be reckoned with. Well, they were right. And I am interested in bringing together priestess circles and women together and proving all of their fears correct, but then using that power for healing, for healing the planet and healing the collective, and using it for personal gain, for manifestation. Why not? Right? It's our magic. It's for
Yeah.
us to use. So using it for the light, for ourselves, and for the collective. And I did this incredible course called Awaken the Priestess Within, and we were working with Hathor and Isis, and it was just as much for me as it was for anyone else. Like, I knew that that was for me to go through those initiations. And now I'm working on something to bring out around September, October, called Starseed Witch, and it's going to be like witchcraft done like, no, not like I'm teaching the ways that to do it. It's like from myself, like witchcraft from the galactics. Like, what is a galactic witchcraft? What is starseed witchcraft? And why is that such a dirty word? And yeah, so it's going to be very cosmic, very galactic, but also very witchy and very unique, unlike anything I've done before. And I continue to stretch the comfort zone of my audience to continue to join me and these little ventures. I always have my stable signature programs, like we talked about, Psychic Light, Weaver of Light, all my certifications and stuff. But then I get to play in the smaller courses. That's where I play. That's where I come alive. I also play on YouTube. I feel like YouTube is just a wild card for me. Like, Instagram is so like, it's very aesthetic, it's very branded, and then I go on YouTube and I just talk about whatever I want to talk about. And it's usually like something crazy. Like, for instance, last week we were talking to me, I brought my husband on to tell a story of a haunted country store that we went through and how something followed us home and dealing with that and just crazy stuff, right? So YouTube's my wild card, and then I get to play in my smaller courses to test things. And sometimes it's a one-off, and that's fine, and that's all it needed to be. And sometimes it's something I want to keep doing and keep doing. So yeah, that's where I'm playing right now. Priestesses, witches, magic, real magic, and the power of that to be used for being like, to create your life from, to be that sovereign creator of your life, using that to back it, to manifest your life, is so powerful.
Yeah. It's fun. I worked with Lilith a little bit, and she's that dark feminine witchy vibe. And as one of my first courses I ever put out there was the dark feminine. I taught, how to use your period blood for sacred rituals and offerings. And one of my favorite things to do before I plant a garden is to offer period blood into my garden. And I take it in there and I do an offering to Gaia, into essentially helping my garden grow, right? So that's a little bit of like how I incorporate some priestess magic and witchy magic. And yeah, it's I taught sex magic. That's always a fascinating topic. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. What a fun topic you're going to dive into. It's a good time.
Yeah. That was a lot of Isis. What you're talking about was like you were talking very Isis like teachings. That was very much the stuff that she brought through. And that was like really fun to teach in that course.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jenny, thanks so much for being on Sacred Rebels. And I just want to tell you that I'm thankful to and honored to have you on the show and to showcase your gifts. And being a true trailblazer in our community we need more people like you. We need people to be their authentic selves. So thank you so much for being here today, and for next time.
Thank you.